We've got breaking news out of college football where Michigan has fired head coach Jerome Moore with cause. Michigan AD Ward Manuel released a statement on the matter saying, quote, following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. This constitutes a clear violation of university policy, end quote. Moore has been the head coach of the Wolverines for the past 2 seasons, tallying a 16-8 record. He took over for Jim Harbaugh back in 2024 when Harbaugh left for the Chargers head coach opening after winning a national title with Michigan. The Wolverines went 9-3 this season, finishing the year with a 27-9 loss to Ohio State in Ann Arbor. Biff Poggi, who took charge of Michigan for the 2 games Moore was suspended for this season, has been named interim head coach. For much more on this, let's go ahead and bring in our own Brandon Marcello. Brandon, it's great to see you. I think Chris Hummer, our 24/7 sports analyst, put it perfectly just a minute ago. Michigan kind of late to the party at this point in college football and the coaching chaos that's going on right now. How will the timing of this firing really affect their search for a new head coach?
I don't think it'll affect them from terms of they're going to swing big. They're still going to go after a big coach, and big coaches are probably going to still be interested in this. In fact, it might actually be good timing by this being bad timing. And by that, I mean you'll be getting to a point where the bowl season will probably be winding down by the time they're able to hire someone, and potentially maybe some coaches who are in the playoffs right now. That is something to consider. And one of the coach names that will probably percolate to the top at some point, just because of his ties to the Midwest, is someone like Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, who plays in the first round at Oklahoma here on December 19th. His name was surfacing, at least on a very faint surface level, at Penn State. There was no interest there on his part, but Michigan could be a job that very much maybe piques his interest and is worth something maybe to listen to, especially if there's an early round exit in the college football playoff. But I must urge, it's so very, very early in all this, but this job will attract plenty of attention for some big candidates.
Okay, that's very interesting perspective there. As you said, you expect them to swing big, and we mentioned, most of the big names, big candidates have already had new homes, if you will. But Kalen DeBoer, that's a very interesting name to throw out there. How do you think he actually fits in Michigan?
Well, I mean, listen, he's a guy from the Midwest. He's very much kind of that hard-nosed, blue-collar type of worker that Michigan loves, that fall in love with. They talk about the Michigan man. Maybe he's not necessarily a Michigan man, but I think he's someone who could very well fit in that. But having said that, there are going to be plenty of opportunities here for someone to kind of step in. I would even throw out a name like Brian Kelly. He was just fired at LSU. He's someone that may have been a dream job at one point in his career. That's someone to keep in mind on. Also, let's think about maybe some Big Ten coaches that are currently already in the Big Ten, have a lot of experience. I mean, Matt Campbell's name in the Big 12, adjacent there, would have been something that came up before the Penn State job, and he ended up getting that just this past week. But look around. Minnesota's P.J. Fleck, for example, he's had a lot of success there contextually for what Minnesota is accustomed to. So some names out there, again, this is very early, but there will be big names interested in this, especially when you consider we just passed the early signing period, right? And the transfer portal doesn't open up until January 2nd. So if there's a playoff team right now whose coach hasn't signed a new contract or is going elsewhere, maybe they could show some interest in this, especially if they have an early round exit or maybe a second round exit here in the next few weeks.
Just lastly here for you, Brandon, we saw Penn State obviously take their sweet time in finding their next head coach. How aggressive do you think Michigan will be in finding their new guy? What's the time frame you're thinking?
They need to have someone in place by January 2nd. Before the new year, I would expect they need to have someone there because the portal will open up January 2nd. And, listen, let's make no doubt here. Listen, Michigan still has a bowl game to play in right now. The Citrus Bowl against Texas. That's a prime matchup outside the playoff system. And now you're going to have an interim coach situation there. And you're probably going to have some players here potentially that could opt out of the bowl game who may have played anyway now that Sherrone Moore is out as the coach. So there's a lot of moving parts here. They've got to kind of circle the wagons, rally everybody around, make sure they can get everybody to go through this bowl game, and then adjust from there what they want to do as they try to hire a coach. But I think they need to move swiftly here. But having said that, they've got 3 weeks, I think, really a 3-week window here to zero in on someone, hire them, get them in place, so when the transfer portal opens, they're ready to go. And another thing, and Chris Hummer brought this up earlier, that that some hesitation among some of the boosters to kind of invest in the roster going forward, because there had been murmurs about this. So even at the game a couple of weeks ago I was at, there was murmurs about Sherrone Moore and his future there. So I think this is a situation where the boosters and everybody are probably going to rally behind whoever this new coach is and put a big infusion of cash to kind of help there in the support structure. And so when they get on the ground there on January 2nd, that coach, they'll be able to hit it running and sprinting and try and get some big time guys, so to make sure that Michigan is still a championship type level contender in the Big Ten next season.
We have learned that Biff Poggi will be interim head coach as they do play in the Citrus Bowl, as you noted. Tell us, just as we end here, Brandon, who he is, if he could actually be a legit candidate here. Who is Biff Poggi and what should we know?
I would not expect him to be a serious candidate. And of course, he'll probably get consideration. Well, let's consider this. He's already served as an interim coach before. Michigan's been through a lot of turbulence since the end days of Jim Harbaugh, all the way over to his successor and Sherrone Moore. At this point, you would think from the outside looking in that Michigan wants a clean break now from the Jim Harbaugh era and just all of the controversy and off the field issues they've been dealing with over the last 3 years. Now, Michigan people will defend themselves, and that's what a fan base will do. But at this point, you have an opportunity to clean the slate and move on to something completely new. Michigan's a blue blood program. It's going to be fine. It's still going to be a championship type contender. But at this point, they've been inching closer and closer to this day of going beyond the Jim Harbaugh era and everything that kind of came with that and the baggage. And at this point, I would suspect that they're going to make that clean break and hire someone from the outside.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Much more on this breaking news as the conversation is just starting, as Sherrone Moore has been fired by Michigan. He has been the head coach of the Wolverines for the past 2 seasons, tallying a 16-8 record. He took over for Jim Harbaugh back in 2024. As you see, it's just gone downhill, really, since the Harbaugh Blues, I guess you could say, when Harbaugh left for the Chargers head coaching opening after winning a national title with Michigan. The Wolverines went 9-3 this season, finishing the year with a loss to Ohio State at home. We'll have much more on this as Jerome Moore out as head coach at the University of Michigan. Stay with us here on HQ.